What's up, everybody? Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. We have a story that I did not anticipate we would be talking about coming up today, and that is about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, everybody's favorite. I was directed to this story from Front Office Sports that has been making the rounds today about Notre Dame, what they're seeking in their next conference deal, revenue wise. Excuse me, I say conference deal. I just let the cat out of the bag by doing that. What they're looking for out of their next TV deal is their current deal with NBC is set to expire after the 2024 season. Notre Dame needs a new deal. Notre Dame needs more money than they are currently getting. And if they are going to get the money that they are actually seeking, may well require them actually joining a conference finally. So we have a little bit of Notre Dame movement. And those of you that have been following this understand full well that Notre Dame is the biggest linchpin in everything. And if Notre Dame moves, if something happens with the Fighting Irish, a lot of dominoes are going to fall into place after that. That could dramatically alter the landscape here of what it is that we are dealing with. So this is a new wrinkle. This is a little bit of a curveball that is thrown into the action right now with Notre Dame apparently seeking in the neighborhood of $65 to $75 million, which would likely require them to join a conference. We'll get into the entire report from Front Office Sports here on the show today and dive into all of that. We've also got a little bit on the Pac-12. I would say the most noteworthy thing coming out of the Pac-12 here over the last couple of days has just been a concentrated, noticeable push for SMU to showcase that the Mustangs have a ton of money. I would call it, some borderline SMU propaganda that has been coming out from like John Wilner. And I think we talked a little bit about that last time. And his question that was posed to him, will the Big 12 regret not adding SMU? We're now starting to see it from like John Canzano too, pushing the idea of this collective that SMU has, how much money they have, how dangerous they could be because of that. And I don't mean any of this to really demean SMU. I think they would be a fine add for the Pac-12 if they're going to add 2 to 4 teams. But let's not overstate this. I mean, SMU still has all of the same money now that they would have in the Pac-12, and they have certainly not been running around dominating the AAC. They've been kind of a second-tier school in the AAC. Like, okay, but not some dominant force. So I think some of this SMU hype is a little bit overstated, and it would make sense here when some of the rumors are swirling that a deal could be presented here pretty soon that now starts to push for, hey, looks like San Diego State and SMU is going to be the move after this, so we need to start propping up SMU and making them look good. It's the vibe I get with seeing all of this, but we can talk a little bit more about SMU today. I should have mentioned with that Notre Dame story, there's even a little drop in here that could be hinting at maybe just an outside possibility of the Big 12 or the ACC or the Pac-12 landing Notre Dame, which was very interesting to me. Not something that I would have speculated about at all. Hey, San Diego State is sitting here just a couple days ahead of this deadline, which of course is June 30th on Friday. That is the deadline when they will presumably be without a conference if the Pac-12 doesn't put something together in the next 48 hours, basically. So that's not great news necessarily for San Diego State, especially now that we've seen the letters. That is one thing that's happened over the last couple of days. We discussed the back and forth that the letter is going on between San Diego State and the Mountain West Conference. They've been arguing over whether or not San Diego State did send an official letter of withdrawal. Now we have seen them thanks to Freedom of Information Act requests, and I got to say, I side with the Mountain West on this. It sure reads like an official resignation letter, the initial one that was sent from San Diego State to the Mountain West. So I don't really blame the Mountain West for taking it the way that they did. We've got that. John Wilner outlined some Pac-12 scenarios here with their TV deal, hopefully, maybe, possibly, coming soon. What is most likely to least likely and how all of this works out. We got media reps for Big 12 Media Days. If you're interested in that, I can tell you, the plan is right now that I'm going to be at Big 12 Media Days in a couple of weeks. So I very much look forward to that. I think that's like Wednesday, Thursday, I believe it's Wednesday, Thursday. So might even be able to do like a live show from Dallas, Arlington. Forget exactly where it's at. Are we going at the Star? It's been at the Star. Anyway, potentially getting some coverage there from Big 12 Media Days. It is looking pretty likely. So I look forward to that as well. That's what I've got on my outline coming up on the show here today. But you guys know, if you've been here before, you can dictate what happens in the show. You can dictate where the content is going while supporting me at the same time. And you do that by simply clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something. When you do that, it will pin your chat up at the top for me, ensures that you get on, again, lets you dictate some of the content here on the show. I will answer your question, read your comment, whatever it might be, and you are supporting the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 and conference realignment content on a week in, week out basis. I could not do it without all of your support. Genuinely appreciate all of you guys who do so generously support here throughout the year. So click the $ below the chat box where it says say something if you would like to be a part of the show here tonight. We've got 140 people already in the chat tonight. I will not be able to keep up with everything going on there. So if you want to be in, click that $ below the chat box where it says say something. Another easy way to support the channel, totally free. Just need one click. If you could just like the video, I would greatly appreciate it. Help spike that YouTube algorithm. All of that stuff helps. Also, leave a comment in the comment section of the video, either before, during, or after. That definitely helps me out as well. So if you guys could head down there, whether you love me, hate me, agree, disagree, any of that stuff helps. So please do that. I appreciate all of you guys for doing that. You can also support the channel on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4, especially for those of you who are watching this after the fact. You're not catching it live. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to support the channel that way also. Okay, the headliner today, boys, it's the Golden Domers, boys and girls. What am I doing with boys there? Too used to being on, I did Threemont earlier today, my K-State podcast. We interviewed Will Howard. Shameless plug for that. You can catch it tomorrow. Big 12 champion quarterback Will Howard on the Threemont podcast, but I'm used to saying boys when I'm talking to my guys Cole and Derek on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, the headline today is the Golden Domers, Notre Dame. We get this story popping off from Front Office Sports. And now this is something I would say to put on your radar. What is going to happen with Notre Dame here? There are a ton of variables because the obvious conference connection with Notre Dame has always been the Big Ten. What is going to happen with Notre Dame in the Big Ten? Will that come to fruition? And now we have a new Big Ten commissioner in Tony Petitti. And we're going to learn more later on in this article about the fact that Notre Dame has a new athletic director, incoming athletic director, Pete Bavacqua, NBC Sports chairman, who is going to succeed Jack Swarbrick in 2024. At the end of the 2024 season, that is when Notre Dame's TV deal with NBC expires. So there are a lot of moving parts here. And this is another reason why you should really pay attention to this, is just we don't really know how this is going to go. When you have new players involved in the game here, who knows exactly where all this will lead? But this is the story. This is why Front Office Sports rolled with this and decided to grace us with this story. Notre Dame will be seeking to triple its football rights fees to $65 million to $75 million annually during its next cycle of media negotiations, sources told Front Office Sports. But if the Fighting Irish want that kind of money, they might have to give up their cherished independence and finally join a Power 5 conference or a power conference. So sources tell Front Office Sports that Notre Dame wants to triple its football rights fees and get up to $65 to $75 million, which makes perfect sense. I mean, look, I don't like Notre Dame, but Notre Dame clearly as a property is worth $65 to $75 million. When you see the numbers that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be putting up, that would just have them on an even playing field with them. Notre Dame is clearly that kind of a brand in college football. There is really no denying that, whether you love or hate Notre Dame. The Big Ten, by the end of its contract with peer schools that like Notre Dame would consider, Ohio State, Michigan, like peer schools, they could be making upwards of $90 million by the end of that TV contract. And currently, where's the number here? Notre Dame is in the mid-30s right now. They're in the mid-$30 million range for their payout with this current deal with NBC. So you're talking about being like 3 times, if that were to just continue playing out, being 3 times less in terms of your earning power than your peer schools. That is not something that is going to fly at Notre Dame. It's a similar, honestly, reality and realization that Notre Dame is having here to what most of the ACC is having. But the problem for the ACC is that they don't have a deal expiring at the end of 2024. Theirs is like the end of 2035. So the ACC has a lot longer to go. and Notre Dame is a bigger brand. They are the biggest brand. They've got a better opportunity here to go make this happen for themselves. So, anyway, they're in a better spot than these schools in the ACC. But a lot of people have speculated about this, and I do wonder what like Notre Dame's value would be just on the open market. But it is tough. I would think anyway, it would be tough, especially now. Remember, we're at a time when what have we talked about with the Pac-12? They're having a rougher time because of what the current landscape is with media rights, with ESPN making some cutbacks, the spigot being turned off. It's not just this unlimited free flow of money going to all live sports streaming rights now at this point. So, like, a lot has changed. A lot has changed in the environment, which would seemingly, I would imagine, make it more difficult for Notre Dame to approach any kind of a number like that with just a one-off partner. We'll see. And this is just one report saying sources told Front Office Sports that Notre Dame is trying to triple their football rights, and that to do so, they would likely have to join a conference. But Notre Dame also fiercely does value the independence, and their athletic director is a Notre Dame grad. A lot of decisions to be made here, but an easier way, I would think, certainly an easier way and a quicker path, a better path to getting to that sort of money would be to join the Big Ten. Or I suppose if they wanted to, they could join the SEC. Wouldn't that be something if it's Notre Dame going full heel and joining the SEC as opposed to the Big Ten? But that we know would get them that sort of money. They would be additive to the contract. They would be the one brand that's left that for sure would make the Big Ten whole at least, and then possibly add a little bit more to the TV deal if they hop into the conference there. So, but as the article goes on to say here, the question of maintaining independence is key for Notre Dame's next TV contract, as the current longstanding partnership with NBC Sports expires after the 2024 college football season. At its start in 1991, the Notre Dame NBC partnership was groundbreaking and innovative. Irish games were nationally televised on broadcast TV. The exposure and marketing opportunities provided by NBC were priceless. And yes, that is a valid point. I mean, think about that. Back in 1991, Notre Dame gets the exclusive partnership with NBC. That is pretty groundbreaking at the time that Notre Dame got that. And it has served Notre Dame very well over the years to have all of that national exposure. Like, you always know that it's not just that it's going to be on cable TV. Like, this is broadcast television, right? Anybody with the bunny ears has been able to get Notre Dame football since 1991, most of the time, because of how many games that they are playing on NBC. But the times, they are a-changing. The article points out Notre Dame's current annual payments now lag behind the lucrative rights fees of power conference schools. It says the Fighting Irish receive somewhere in the mid $30 million range for overall rights fees, $22 million per year from their NBC football only contract, as well as about $11 million annually from the ACC. So if you think about that, they're talking about Notre Dame basically getting like around $33 million per year at this point. That's like a Big 12 school. The Big 12's at 31-7 with the new deal. If Notre Dame continues on this trajectory, they would be making the same amount as a Big 12 school. Like, this ends at the end of 2024, right? So the 2024 contract or payout for Notre Dame then would be basically the same as a Big 12 school. So there's that. $33 million per year right now for Notre Dame, essentially what they are making. The Big Ten's new mid-$7 billion 7-year deal with NBC, Fox Sports, and CBS Sports will eventually dish out up to $90 million to schools like Ohio State and Michigan. That gives them a big financial advantage over the Irish. Now, there is a media consultant that is quoted here, and we've seen this guy, former Fox Sports executive, quoted in a couple different places recently. It is Patrick Crakes. He says, quote, "My big picture thought is that Notre Dame will need a conference to support a 3-time bump long term. I think either the Big Ten or the SEC would do. Also, don't rule out a third new conference in several years. A lot of assumptions are falling apart as pay TV bundle economics go flat." I mean, all right, there's a lot there. So his assumption there is, like, if Notre Dame wants to do this long term, they will probably have to join a conference. Again, with the timing of all of this in the next year, trying to get this done, because, I would think you'd want to have this done within a year before you're going into the 2024 football season, where it's going to expire after all of that. If you're going to get that figured out, then the climate would not suggest that it is going to be the best time to be coming to market for all of this right now. And I know how valuable Notre Dame is, but these networks, I'm sure, would rather get Notre Dame just into a conference and bundle it all up with that and just wrap it neatly into that instead of having to worry about doing them separately with their own deal like what they have had here with NBC. And for that type of price tag, that may be the route that Notre Dame indeed has to go. Article points out, I saw somebody in the chat, I just scanned the chat real quick and saw someone talking about Jack Swarbrick, who's been at Notre Dame and how much he has valued independence, and he has certainly been a stern guy as far as that goes, like not wanting to budge on Notre Dame being an independent here. But the wild card, the article says, is incoming Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua, the NBC Sports chairman, who will succeed current AD Jack Swarbrick in 2024. Both Bavacqua and his father are Notre Dame alums. He views the role as a dream job, but he was also known to be a risk taker. Could he be the power broker that finally marries Notre Dame football to a power conference? So there's some good context. I mean, I was unaware of that the new Notre Dame athletic director, the incoming Notre Dame athletic director, has a reputation as a risk taker. I guess, look, it's risky based on the past of Notre Dame that they have been an independent for so long now, and that's such a part of their identity. But it almost feels like it'd be more of a risk these days if you're going to say, hey, we value our independence so much, we're going to be so stern on that we're going to take less money for it and put ourselves at a competitive disadvantage to our peers like Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, the SEC, Alabama, Georgia, et cetera. These schools that we are competing with at the top in the college football playoff, we're going to take substantially less money than them just because we're so stubborn about this independence thing. That to me seems like the riskier move actually here than going and joining a conference, in my humble opinion. Now, I suppose the counter, as I kind of argue this out in my head, would be you come back and say, well, maybe that will make life a little bit more difficult. Maybe the scheduling becomes a little bit more difficult. You have less control over that if you're having to take on a conference schedule as opposed to just scheduling out everything on its own. But I don't know. I don't know that like the Big Ten is going to wind up being all that different. We've seen plenty. Go look at Iowa's schedule this year, and I know that things may be changing with the Big Ten and how that is going to go down in the future. But there have been Iowa, Penn State. They've had plenty of these soft cupcake schedules where they can just rip through lower level Big Ten competition, play one, maybe two good teams every single year and just float their way to 10-2. And in the new era, Notre Dame just, sleepwalking their way to 10-2. That's going to land them in the playoff, I would think, more often than not, once we hit the expanded playoff. So I don't know. I almost view it as less risky for them to go ahead and just take on a conference here, but we shall see. I mean, this is another one of those things. I understand the logic here. I understand that they're saying they have sources telling them this is what Notre Dame is going to seek, which that is extremely believable. Of course, Notre Dame is going to want to seek market value for basically what they are as a property. And I think then you can just kind of logically walk through this and say, well, what are the odds that they get that long-term? Might be difficult doing it on their own based on the climate right now. So I don't know that that's like some earth-shattering report here, but I would just say that this kind of brings into focus, like it may not be as calm as we think it is going to be if and when the Pac-12 actually gets a deal done and this stuff gets sorted out. I think there are a lot of tentacles to this. So if this really is going to be true, is somebody going to leave with Notre Dame? Will somebody go with Notre Dame to the Big Ten? Are they going to want to pair them with anybody else? Does this become the sort of ticket that like an Oregon and or Washington could latch onto? I should say that Washington and or Oregon, because I think Washington is the bigger prize in the eye of the TV networks now. Does that happen? Is it like a Stanford, who had been mentioned before, as perhaps somebody to pair with Notre Dame to join the Big Ten, which seems a little crazy because I don't know how Stanford is going to compete in this era of college football, the way the game has changed and the way some of the rules have changed. And then what will the trickle-down effects be of that? If it is going to involve one of the Pac-12 schools over there at a certain point, does that just blow up the league? Does that then force four corners over to the Big 12? Like there could be a lot of wide-ranging effects that happen because of this as we continue to monitor it. So the other part that I wonder about is just how everything will go with a new incoming athletic director after Jack Swarbrick and a new Big Ten commissioner right now. How will all of that actually play out? How will all of that actually work? How will they work together? What are these guys really thinking here? Heck of a way for Tony Petitti to really announce himself as Big Ten commissioner when he's following in the footsteps of a guy that made a huge move to leave his lasting legacy on the Big Ten. That would be one way to upstage Kevin Warren, is to go out and land Notre Dame right after Warren pulled in USC. and UCLA, but mainly USC into the Big Ten Conference. So I would just say that this is moved to like the medium burner for me, where it was totally on the back burner. Before, with everything going on, I had kind of forgotten about Notre Dame, wasn't paying much attention to Notre Dame, and just operating under the assumption that they're just going to find a way to keep their independence all the time because it means so damn much to them. Clearly, now I'm at least open to the possibility here that all right, maybe we need to actually explore this a little bit more, and some of the economics of this may actually push Notre Dame down that road. Could be a realistic possibility. So medium burner. Pac-12 stuff is on the front burner. ACC, right now really to me is back burner, just because it seems like people have been trying to poke holes in the legalities of the grant of rights right now, and it's not going very well. So that's kind of back burner. Move Notre Dame up to the medium burner. They are on the medium burner. Okay, before we get to SMU, let me hit up some of your donations here. Again, if you guys want to be a part of the show tonight, click the $sign below the chat box where it says say something. You can attach your donation to your question or comment. It will pin it up at the top of the chat for me. Ensures I see it, ensures that it gets read here on the show tonight. 300 people almost in this chat. I am not able to pay attention to much else going on there. So if you want to be a part of the show, click the $sign below the chat box where it says say something. Also, just the way that you can support the channel and support Big 12 content, conference realignment content coming at you each and every week here on the channel. Also, hey, if you guys could like the video, that would be great. We've got 294 people in here and only 46 likes of the video. Totally free, one click. Would really appreciate it if you guys would do that for me and leave some comments in that comment section. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel, I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Daniel says Notre Dame is a part of the ACC grant of rights. That's why they had to play football in 2020 with the ACC. Okay, well, so that article didn't really address much of that. I would just imagine that wouldn't be too tricky for them to get out of. But I'll be honest, I'm a little bit out over my skis on that. I am a little bit out over my skis on that. It's only the $11 million piece of that. I don't know what the exit fee would wind up being for Notre Dame in that scenario. I would imagine they could find a way to work that out. Maybe it turns into more of a leverage. Maybe that's what it's referencing in the article when it says, hey, don't discount like a third conference here if the ACC can try to leverage some of that. I don't know what really the insinuation honestly was. I guess I didn't really attack that point very much from the article a second ago, but let me just read you the exact wording there. It said, also, don't rule out a third new conference in several years. I don't know, man. It's hard for me to see anybody, unless there is some way that the ACC can work out some legalities there to pull them in. I don't know how that's really going to happen. To me, if it's all about money, Notre Dame is seeking the money here. We know that there are only going to be two conferences that can actually satisfy that for Notre Dame. It is going to be the Big Ten. It is going to be the SEC. So I'm not sure exactly what that would be in reference to. But fair point, Daniel, to bring that up. We shall see. I will be honest, I don't know how all of that would actually go down, but Notre Dame would sure be in a predicament if that would be something that's going to be cost inhibitive, if that would be legitimately a barrier, because like I said, their deal with NBC is going to end not at the end of this year, but at the end of next year. So that is coming right around the corner. Will, what's up, Will? Will, appreciate you being here. Will wants to chat a little SMU, which we do have on the docket tonight. Will says SMU's wealth has purchased it a losing conference record in every league it's played in. Woof. Southwest Conference, WAC, Conference USA, and the AAC. SMU's wealth has purchased it a losing conference record in every league it's played in. That's unbelievable. I did not realize that. I don't know. It feels like the narrative has now sort of become like SMU is this sleeping giant. And I understand, look, I get how people get there. I don't doubt that SMU has plenty of money, right? Private school in Dallas. I understand the idea that they would have a lot of money. I believe folks when they say like this collective could be as powerful as any outside of Oregon in the Pac-12 conference. I understand that they have money, and Pony Excess was all about how much money they were lavishing on these players when it was illegal. Then now it is legal essentially to pay players to play. So I get where you kind of walk your way to that, but Will makes the ultimate point here. Like, where are the actual results here? Show me the results. And I know that the death penalty set the program back for a while, but it's a long time. We have had a long time since then. We are in now the new era. We've been in this new era for a little while now, and SMU is not lighting the AAC on fire. They also in Dallas, there's so much talk about the Dallas market narrative. I feel like that's kind of where like Wilner was really traversing down that road first before we got more of the money angle here lately from SMU. And like, I mean, I don't live in Dallas. I don't know the Metroplex, but if you are listening to folks who do, they will tell you, I mean, SMU is way down the list in terms of popularity, how much people are paying attention to them, who really cares about SMU football in DFW. I don't think it's really bringing you that much of that market. So, yeah, where has this been? Like, if SMU really has that much potential with the money, why have they not been just running it up in the AAC? Because I understand you would say, well, now, John, they're going to get Power 5 resources and exposure and all that. But how much do the resources really matter? I mean, if they're going to get an extra $20 million a year from the TV contract, how much does that really matter if what you're saying is we've got donors that are capable of making this a powerhouse collective? Well, then that should be what is carrying the day, not an extra $20 million from TV revenue here. And there shouldn't be this wide gulf in what they've been in the AAC and what they presumably would be in the Pac-12 here. That just doesn't all compute and quite add up to me. And I think there's just a logical road we can walk down. It would behoove the Pac-12 to gas up SMU right now. It absolutely does, because if they're going to be a pretty likely member of this conference eventually, then you want them to look as good as possible. And you just take the narrative that you have, you take the reasoning that you have and exaggerate it a little bit. I'm not saying that hasn't been done around here by plenty of Big 12 folks, but that's the read I get really on what's going on with SMU right now. Here was just a little blurb from John Canzano about SMU this week. It says, Chris Schumann is the executive director of the Boulevard Collective, SMU's high-octane donor collective. I spoke with a number of wealthy donors for a piece I wrote last week and came away thinking that the buying power of the school's collective is a threat to some of the top entities in the Pac-12. If the Mustangs are invited into the Pac-12 via conference expansion in the coming days or weeks, where would SMU's NIL collective rank when it comes to wealth? Turns out the folks at the Boulevard Collective have studied it. Said Schumann, it's behind only Division Street. That's where we are. Division Street is Oregon's collective that has billionaire Phil Knight backing it, among others. Canzano says, last year I was told by one Oregon donor that the initial buy-in for Division Street was $500,000, and that did not get you a say in who the collective did business with. So high rollers, basically what you're getting out of that, high rollers that are going into the Oregon collective, and SMU would be trailing only them. Schumann told me that the SMU collective was included in the analysis done by consulting firms trying to gauge whether the school was a good fit for the Pac-12. I think that's actually pretty smart. I will give the Pac-12 that. I mean, if you're looking at schools with the way the environment is currently comprised, I would definitely be looking at collectives and saying like, okay, is this a school that will have the resources to legitimately compete in this new day and age where NIL is so important? That is a part of your potential. So for the potential piece, again, I get it. I do get it. The potential piece here for SMU is that they would have a lot of donor money to go splash around in NIL. Theoretically, that exists out there. I just don't understand why more of that hasn't been happening with where they're at in the AAC right now. Yes, I get there would be excitement for joining a Power 5 conference, and maybe, I guess maybe it's just, hey, you tickle the fancy of enough old money donors that say, hey, we're going to go back to the Pony Express days all of a sudden like it's 1982. And we'll be great. We'll be grand. So I'm excited by going to the Pac-12 and I'm going to donate more money. But I wouldn't think it's going to make that big of a difference from where they're actually at right now. A little bit more from this article. Geography, campus culture, academics, media market, brand, and some other criteria certainly matter. But if the Pac-12 is trying to figure out how competitive the Mustangs might be right away, the health of the collective offers a glimpse. And see, that's, again, that feels a little propagandizing to me. Right away, if you want to talk about 10 years down the road, potential of SMU 10 years down the road, that's one thing. But we're talking about this collective is going to make them that competitive right away. I mean, maybe in basketball where you could just add a guy or two right away and say, let's roll. But football recruiting, that takes a little bit more time. There are more guys there that you would have to really cultivate. And even if you have one hot year in the portal, I have a hard time seeing that, especially when the Pac-12 is simultaneously this year touting how damn good their league is on the field. You're trying to tell me this is such an excellent year on the field, which on paper it is, with USC obviously outgoing, but Utah, Oregon, Washington State, Oregon State, like all these teams that are going to have pretty salty squads this year. If that push is going on, then how are we thinking SMU, even with whatever money they're going to throw out there, is going to come in and like legitimately compete near the top of the Pac-12, man? I don't see it. That feels like a bridge too far to me to frame it as you're trying to see how they can compete right away. Look at all this money that they have to splash around. Here's the final bit of the article. Schumann told me, quote, we've had good feedback. We believe SMU is being analyzed in a number of ways, and we're part of the component. Okay. All right. Well, we shall see. If it turns into Pony Excess days and Craig James and Eric Dickerson are running around there all over Pac-12 squads and taking them to the Rose Bowl, then so be it. I will come on here and say that I'm wrong, but I do not foresee that happening. I mean, SMU's a long distance behind. TCU just played the national championship game last year, and they're in the same metroplex. So it's not just all of the others, like Texas A&M, Texas Tech, who have bigger alumni bases, are more popular there, like LSU. You're starting to creep into SEC country a little bit there. Not just them that you're behind, but even within your own metroplex, a school that has already gone through this process and is, 10 years ahead of you in this process, jumping to Power 5. They just played for the national championship last year. So it's a long road to hoe, IMO. Long road to hoe. For good old SMU. But I appreciate it, Will. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for being here tonight. Same with Daniel. Daniel, I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being here. Cat fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. Let me say, Daniel, K-State has they're going up head-to-head against Nebraska for a couple key recruiting battles here in the next couple of weeks, one of which I think will be announced tomorrow, that I feel pretty good about. But man, I've been like reintroduced to Nebraska fans because of that. It's like, dumb offseason message board fighting back and forth between the two. But God, had forgotten the unbelievable amount of hubris still left over that I guess has survived since 1995, that has survived since Tommy Frazier left town in Nebraska, even though that they are have been arguably the worst Power 5 football program over it's been 6 years since they made a bowl game, right? I mean, they're like bottom 5 in terms of Power 5 schools over that time span, not having gone to a bowl, but yet still that much hubris about what they are. It is nauseating. So I feel your pain, Daniel. I just want to say that. I feel your pain being reintroduced to Nebraska. Boy. And on that helmet still stands for knowledge, I see out there in Lincoln. Anyway, Daniel says Notre Dame plays a lot of Big Ten schools anyway, but they are too chicken to play K-State. Go Cats. Yeah, there have been 2 times where it's come close, and I really wanted to see it. The most obvious being 2012. If K-State had just beaten Baylor and Waco, that would have been K-State and Notre Dame for the national championship. Colin Klein against Manti Te'o would have been awesome, and I think K-State would have stood a really good chance of winning that game. Unfortunately, K-State got blasted by Baylor, and Notre Dame got blasted by Alabama in the national championship game. The other was 2019, when it could have been K-State against Notre Dame in the Camping World Bowl. But, hey, Jamie Pollard did a good job lobbying for Iowa State. They got the nod, and they got to go lose to Notre Dame in the Camping World Bowl when K-State was the better team and had just beaten them head-to-head before that. So wish I would have been able to see it. There'd be storylines abound, right? I mean, at one point, the losingest college football program of all time against, at one point, and in some ways, the best or winningest college football program of all time in Notre Dame. Storylines would have just written themselves on that. But hopefully someday we'll get to see it, Daniel. That is one school. I mean, I'm not a huge bowl game guy anymore these days with the way the landscape is, and that's going to even dwindle more when we get the expanded playoff. But that's one, like, if that could ever happen in a bowl game, I would definitely just love to see it. K-State playing Notre Dame. So anyway, I appreciate that, Daniel. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here. If you guys want to hop in on the show tonight, get your question or comment on the show, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you do that. It will pin your chat up at the top. Supports the work that I am doing here on this channel to bring you Big 12 and conference realignment content on a week in, week out basis. Could not do it without all of your support. Genuinely appreciate you guys who do that. So again, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something to ensure that you make it in tonight with 350 people now in the chat. Also, if you could like the video, I would appreciate that. Totally free, just one click, like the video. If you're watching this after the fact, it is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you would like to contribute that way as well. All right, so we made it through Notre Dame. We've made it through some SMU talk. Now we get to San Diego State. San Diego State is a mere 2 days away from being conferenceless, being without a man without a conference. You know, you've heard about a man without a country. San Diego State could be a man without a conference here in short order. And thanks to some good reporting, digging things up, Freedom of Information Act requests, we have seen now what the letters look like in this back and forth between San Diego State and the Mountain West. And I got to be honest, I'm siding with the Mountain West here on this one. It really does feel like San Diego State's initial letter very much reads like an official resignation letter. So I'm just going to quote from a summary of it here. It says, in a letter to, quote, Mountain West Conference and all members, De La Torre, who is the president at San Diego State, said, quote, this letter, this is a quote, guys. This is a quote from the letter. Quote, this letter is to formally notice that San Diego State University intends to resign from the Mountain West Conference effective June 30th, 2024, or at an agreed upon later date. It has been an absolute joy to collaborate and compete with each of the member universities. So 2 things here. One, it literally says this letter is to formally notice that San Diego State intends to resign from the Mountain West Conference. I guess the one thing that you can quibble about there is they say intends to, as opposed to is. But man, you're sending a letter that's saying, hey, we intend to resign from the Mountain West Conference effective June 30th, 2024, or at an agreed upon later date. So it's saying we intend to resign on the 30th. We haven't resigned yet, but we intend to resign on the 30th is how that reads, or at an agreed upon later date, which of course was their request in the rest of the letter. And then, I mean, just the other part of this is it has been an absolute joy to collaborate and compete with each of the member universities. I don't know why I can't read that. But saying it has been an absolute joy to collaborate and compete with everybody, I mean, that's like a goodbye. Like, does that not sound like a goodbye? That it's very much goodbye language. So if you're just, feels like a reasonable person reading this would be like, yeah, that's your goodbye letter. That's your, this is the end sort of letter here. It seems pretty obvious to me from up here, but San Diego State tried to really walk that back. Their follow-up letter after they got, it was, a pretty cordial response from the Mountain West. It was like, okay, hey, we get it. Appreciate you. You've been great members of the conference, and we accept your formal resignation. And then San Diego State writes back and says, first, our letter dated June 13th was not the official notice of resignation. As plainly set forth in this letter, its purpose was twofold: to request a 1-month extension of time and to ask for the opportunity to discuss the exit fee. Second, because San Diego State has not already resigned for the Mountain West, the formal notice date has not yet occurred. As such, no such payment. All right, so they're talking about payments there at that point. But San Diego State very quickly tries to walk this back in the second of the exchanges. Then the Mountain West comes back and says the conference will not approve any waiver over the bylaws, and the conference still considers San Diego State to be on its way out. Quote, this letter is not intended to express agreement with any interpretation expressed in the second notice letter, including those concerning whether your letter dated June 13th, 2023 constitutes a notice of resignation under the bylaws. The conference continues to reserve all rights. So basically, it's kind of a middle finger one there. Hey, sorry, tough luck. We already consider you out. You are out. That is the response again from the Mountain West. So very interesting to actually read those. I actually don't think it's really too far off from what you would have expected based on what the reporting was there initially. And hey, we have discussed it a little bit with John Schaefer last week. San Diego State may be playing a little bit of chess when we all feel like they're playing checkers here. For their sake, I certainly hope that is true, because San Diego State is one entity in all of this conference realignment game that I am definitely rooting for. Like, I would like to see them succeed. I feel like they've earned it. I've always been partial to the city of San Diego itself. Enjoy getting out there. I've had many friends that live out there. I want nothing but the best for San Diego State. And I especially feel terrible if they're going to get screwed at the hands of George Kliavkoff dragging his feet and not being able to put together an adequate media deal or do it in any sort of timely manner or fashion. So having said all of that, I am rooting for them. But everything that we know publicly certainly makes this look a little bit like they have misplayed the hand somewhat. But I hope I'm wrong, and it may just all be moot, assuming that the Pac-12 does get some kind of deal done before say their conference media days, which is what John Wilner has now been pushing as the unofficial deadline. So anyway, that's your San Diego State updates. Where do we go? Neilio. What's up, Neilio? Appreciate you, Neilio. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support, as always, my friend. Neilio says, hey, John, love the show, buddy. Don't ever stop doing what you're doing for us. We all sincerely appreciate it. Hashtag Go Cats. I got you, Neilio. You're my guy. Thank you for the support, as always. I got some fire content for you, man. Be listening to 3 tomorrow. Really good interview with Will Howard. Again, Big 12 champion quarterback, reigning Big 12 champion quarterback. Not respected enough, reigning Big 12 champion quarterback. I see all that Quinn Ewers, Jalen Daniels sort of hype that we're building up this offseason. Dylan Gabriel even. I see it all. I'm not giving enough love and respect to my boy Will Howard. So let's go ahead and make sure that we respect the man there. But I appreciate you, Neilio. Thank you very much. Okay. Last piece that I have for you here is an article that John Wilner wrote, which I think is pretty good. I think it's a good way to cover all your bases here, which is smart. And it's outlining scenarios that could happen. I think in his words, it was kind of like, hey, these are potentially the most extreme scenarios that could play out with the Pac-12 media deal. Hopefully, again, stressing hopefully nearing completion here pretty soon. But he goes through one of these, actually, he does feel like is fairly likely, and he calls it the X factor. He says the likelihood of this is 60%. So you're going to see the trend here is going to be scenario laid out, how likely it actually is, and the likelihood decreases as we go along here. But here's the situation that Wilner says is 60% likely. He says one facet of the media rights deal is completely unexpected. For months, the trail of breadcrumbs has suggested the Pac-12 will sign a medium-length media rights deal with Apple or Amazon, ESPN, and possibly Fox as partners, an evaluation within close range of the Big 12. But the conference has done a masterful job preventing leaks, and that lack of information leaves us with an overwhelming sense that there's an unreported element, something unprecedented in the history of collegiate media rights deals. I will just stop there and say that would make some sense. If that is a part of the silence here because they are working out something that is a little bit more complicated and new, I could understand how that would be the case. He says, for example, could the number of games on streaming increase over time as that platform becomes mainstream? Could there be some sort of flex scheduling piece? Could the Pac-12 join arms with NBC or CBS? Could it sell data and statistics to a sports gambling company? We are merely guessing, but don't be surprised if one aspect of the deal is an eye-opener. This now, if you're paying attention, this has now become a pretty popular line of thought. Jim Williams, another one of those TV consultants that has been pretty heavily involved in this, tweets quite a bit, would suggest following him on Twitter. He was the one that tweeted out the other day that a source told him that it would be very creative and forward-thinking, this Pac-12 deal, which a lot of people just took to think, all right, probably means more streaming. But man, I'm reading this. I mean, that's an interesting idea. These are all ideas that would be creative and forward-thinking, right, that are being floated here by Wilner. He's saying, could the number of games on streaming increase over time as that platform becomes mainstream? That's interesting, man. That's very interesting. If the deal is like, hey, it's going to be a 7-year deal, and by the end of it, streaming will increase from, 40% to 50, 60% of the contract. I guess I can understand how you would say that's creative and forward thinking. You would be trying to bank again on, like, by that point, streaming will have totally taken over to where that's going to be more valuable than having the ESPN Fox sort of exposure. That would make sense. I think that would be, if you're going to have to bite the streaming bullet, that would certainly be a stronger move than just jumping to the 60%. Basically right away out of the chute in the deal. So I am open to this very much being a possibility for the Pac-12. I would still question whether something like that is going to, totally satisfy everybody involved here. But I don't know. That to me is an interesting idea laid out there, and it seems like we're seeing this in multiple places now. So the Pac-12 seemingly is trying to get the word out that they feel like they have something up their sleeve like this that is going to come out in the deal that will maybe not be like some game-changing sort of thing, but something we'll at least look at and go, okay, that's interesting. That's different. I mean, think back to Andrew Marchand, one of the best sports media reporters out there. He has continuously said, like, Just no one in the industry really knows where this is coming from. Nobody in the industry really understands how they're going to get there to where it is that they want to go with this deal. But I don't know. We don't know. We'll see. That would be one of those things that I guess would be fairly unprecedented. So it could be under the radar and people not really understanding what's going on there. I get it. That's one of those things I would point out to you guys. Like, just be paying attention to that, because that is the word that we're starting to see seep out of Pac-12 circles right now. Scenario number two. Scenario number two is the Pac-12 just staying at 10 schools. This is only 20% likely, according to Wilner. He says the 10 remaining schools decide not to expand. Says the hotline has plunged into the issue of game inventory numerous times, but here's an 8-word recap. More teams equals more games equals more money. I've told you guys that before. It's a part of the reason the Pac-12 feels they need to expand here. You got to have a certain amount of inventory to maximize the amount of money that you're going to get. He says as a 10-team conference, the Pac-12 would have approximately 65 home football games per year to license to media partners. As a 12-team league, it would control roughly 78 games annually, and each game is worth several $1 million. What's more, the additional inventory would allow the Pac-12 to more easily fill the Thursday and Friday night windows that help carry value for the networks. Another important point there, make sure that you have enough inventory to hit some of those one-off sort of nights where they can get a little more bang for their buck and exposure out of playing on those nights. It says, but what if Kliavkoff Cobb crafts a deal that places the Pac-12 in the same valuation range as the Big 12 without the added inventory? In that case, the presidents might favor hunkering down with 10. I would feel bad for San Diego State, who I just raved about a second ago in that scenario, because that would mean that they'd be getting shut out here and be a man without a conference. And I'm with them. I don't think that scenario is very likely. I would think that they're probably going to have to expand once it is that they get a deal locked down here, but potentially that is still out there. I would also say, again, the SMU talk, pay attention to the SMU talk. That makes me feel like expansion would definitely be coming here if they do get this deal actually done. That's a wrap. He labels it a 15% likelihood that the Pac-12 has actually quietly agreed to a media rights deal months ago. But Kliavkoff had to wait after the framework of the deal was in place. Let's see. It says the Pac-12 quietly agreed to a media rights deal months ago. Recall that the flurry of forecasts from university presidents in February and March suggested a deal was imminent. 3 months later, it appears they grossly misread the situation. But what if the presidents were right? What if Kliavkoff accepted final bids from the networks during that early spring window and settled on a preferred offer, but he couldn't cross the finish line because of delays with negotiating partners? Okay. So that was the line that Kirk Schultz, the president at Washington State, was pushing not that long ago. Hey, we maybe actually have a deal here, but we're having to wait because of optics for this partner of ours that's having to make massive layoffs, right? That would kind of fit that narrative. Wilner labels that as a 15% likelihood. He says there is a 10% likelihood that somehow they go all in. This is all in with Mickey, obviously, referring to Disney and ESPN there. He says for all the speculation about ESPN not wanting the Pac-12 inventory or preferring a small package of games, what if the opposite is true? Disney would have the option to place a handful of games on ABC. It would retain the valuable 7:30 p.m. Saturday window, and it would have a huge pool of content for ESPN Plus and any other company-owned streaming platforms. The issue, of course, here is the price point. And yeah, this is the problem with all this. As the conference might desire a comprehensive deal with Disney, but would the valuation figure be acceptable to the cash-starved schools? That's, I think, why you're seeing that at 10%. Not likely that if Disney and ESPN were to do that the price tag would be anywhere near what it is that the Pac-12 actually wants it to be. Last one, he only labels this a 1% likelihood that the Pac-12 decides to add 4 teams, not 2. He threw on another one that was 0.1% likelihood that the Pac-12 doesn't get a deal done going into football season. Bold strategy, Cotton. Yeah, if that is going to be what it is that actually happens, I would think that is very, very unlikely as well. But that's where Wilner's head is at right now on scenarios here and how all of this could play out with the Pac-12. I do want to, I'm going to check. Okay, so I see this because I see Cougar Track's donation. I'm going to read that first. And then I see, because it is right above that, I see Mike has said something that has grabbed my attention here. So I will ask you guys about that to close the show here in just a moment. But if you want to beat the buzzer, you want to get something in the last 5 minutes or so here, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. In order to do that, get your question or comment in, ensures that I read it with over 350 people in the chat right now. Also a way to support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 and conference realignment content on a weekly basis. Cougar Tracks, appreciate you, my friend. Cougar Tracks says, have waited a lot of years for this Saturday. Go Cougs. Yes, this is, I forgot about that, the last time that I will be talking to you guys where we do not have BYU, UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati as official members of the Big 12 Conference. That, of course, will happen on Saturday. So cheers. Cheers to you guys and new beginnings in the Big 12 Conference and everything becoming official. Excited for that. I don't mean to dismiss it flippantly like, oh, hey, I forgot that was coming up. I understand how symbolic and important of a day that is for the 4 schools involved here and for the league. It's just like, man, there's so much going on, and it feels like we've been official for a long time. That's really the thing. I mean, it's like feels like we've been engaged for a very long time. So like, hey, the wedding is cool, the wedding is great, but I mean, we're already living together, so that is why there. But yes, congratulations to making it to this point. I would just offer a thank you to the 4 new schools as well for helping to fortify and solidify this league in a time when it desperately needed it a couple of years ago in 2021. So looking forward to all that coming to fruition and becoming official. All right, so I see Mike here in the chat right above Cougar Track said, someone super chat, John, about the Locked On Pac podcast with Canzano on it. What happened there? I will try to scan the chat, or if somebody does want a super chat, that would be great. But I will try to scan the chat to see what Canzano said. Canzano said the Big Ten added USC and UCLA because they were located in LA. The brand and history of the schools had nothing to do with their invitations. I mean, I guess the idea there would be that that's like a real Fox thing there. Canzano also said that adding San Diego State and SMU would basically be a wash for losing USC and UCLA because Dallas is big. See, this is where, I mean, God, it's probably my duty to go listen to it, right? But I just feel like I'm going to be throwing my phone as I'm listening to it, because that's, I mean, if that's real, I know that I'm just the light switch. Someone light switch. I know that I'm just reading someone's comment here. I didn't actually hear it for myself, but if that's a legitimate sentiment expressed, I mean, we got big problems, and I'm going to have a hard time actually sitting through that if that is really true. Mike says, just watch it. Too crazy to believe without hearing it. All right. Okay. He said SMU is paying off the Comcast bill. I see that. I had heard something about that SMU would just totally pay off like basically pay their way in. Like that would be like an entrance fee to the conference. Again, I would say if they have that much damn money, how are they not just crushing the AAC by grabbing way more talent than everybody else through their NIL collective? Whatever, man. Getting frustrated just talking about it right now. Jim, what's up, Jim? Thank you for your support. I appreciate you, Jim. Really, really do. Very generous of you. Thank you. Jim says, Brett Yormark has talked for months about adding schools, yet the only media funds are for Power 5, not G5. If the 4 corner schools don't apply, which schools and how would the Big 12 pay for them? So there had been some speculation that UConn, and I can't remember if this was an official report that came out somewhere when the UConn buzz got really hot there for a minute, a couple weeks to like a month ago. There was speculation that UConn actually would be able to get a full share, even though they're not technically Power 5 right now, that they would get a full share from, the pro rata clauses in the contracts if they were to come. I know that was mentioned about, obviously like Colorado. But it sounds like they might be able to squeeze that with UConn. It would help with for instance, ESPN being located in Connecticut. Perhaps that adds some motivation there. So I think in terms of a financial piece, UConn becomes pretty likely because of that. San Diego State, I just think there are so many variables with San Diego State. What is going to happen with the Pac-12? Are they going to actually get in there? How do the dynamics of this thing with the Mountain West work out? How desperate does San Diego State get if the Pac-12 continues to wait, and they're stuck here without a home technically? Does that open the lines of communication a little bit more with Yormark? But again, yes, you are talking about the financials being an issue there. So that could get San Diego State kind of stuck in no man's land with the Big 12 if they're saying, hey, we don't actually know that we would be able to get a full share for you coming into the league. We've got financial questions. Now Notre Dame may actually have to join the Big Ten. We kind of want to wait it out and see what's going to go on with pieces falling there. It still feels less likely certainly to me that it would be San Diego State. But I think then you're probably looking at like UConn and trying to work the basketball route, maybe revisiting Gonzaga, and revisiting could even be like the wrong word. We just haven't seen a lot of chatter about that here recently. Maybe opening up those talks a little bit more with Gonzaga and trying to pursue the basketball route if that really is going to happen or the four corners get shut down. Because it seems like the ACC is pretty much, I mean, like I said, we've now seen that like 7 schools are working furiously to try to decode that grant of rights legally, and nobody's been able to figure that thing out. So I really would put that on the back burner and assume that is not happening for right now. So if the four corners shut down, they lock down in the Pac-12 for a while, that doesn't happen. I guess you're still kind of sitting there waiting on Notre Dame, but that might open the door more for some, I see where your head's at, for some group of 5 possibilities. But we shall see. We shall see. It's a very good question, Jim. It's a very good question. I think financially, UConn's probably at the top of the list there. Full-fledged member, might be able to get them in with the full share. San Diego State could be stuck in Tweenerville. Then maybe Yormark goes back to like really working on basketball and trying to build up that basketball brand. And again, work toward the end of separating out the basketball rights in a contract in the future where you could milk extra money out of that, like fairly somewhat significant extra money out of that, which I think would be the deal. We got a couple people. Zach, what's up, Zach? Great to see you, Zach. Always appreciate you being here. Zach says, since he joins the Big 12 this week, cheers to you, sir. Yes, another cheers to you, my friend. Always great to see you here, Zach. Appreciate the Bearcats officially joining the league. Appreciate my guy, Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce, by the way, great quote from him I saw in the latest New Heights podcast, where he said that podcasting is the hardest job in the world. Something like that. I'm pretty sure he said podcasting is the hardest job in the world. And I will just say to my man, Killer Trav, I'm glad somebody finally had the balls to say it, man. This ain't easy. It's a hard life we lead out here, us podcasters and YouTubers. So thank you for Travis Kelce for recognizing the struggle there. Cyclone Steve. Oh, I see Cyclone Steve message retracted. Well, Cyclone Steve, I appreciate the support. I am not seeing any kind of corrected message there. So if I missed anything, my apologies, Cyclone Steve, but thank you for being here. I very much appreciate you. Outlaw of College Football. What's up, Outlaw of College Football? Great to have you in the chat here tonight. Outlaw of College Football says Utah has this self-righteous attitude toward the Big 12, and they have zero reason considering they were a G5 only 13 years ago. I think BYU winning the Natty in 1984 still emasculates them. Well, they certainly have some issues with BYU. They certainly, at least a portion of the fan base have some self-righteousness to them. I'm going to pick my words somewhat carefully here because I did have a couple of Utah fans the other day telling me in my Twitter mentions that a good chunk of the fan base is warming up more to the Big 12 idea. And beyond that it's not fair that we pick on this more extreme part of the fan base that really does thumb their nose at the Big 12. I've outlined why the reasons for it make a lot of sense. They're obviously doing great. I mean, they're kind of running the Pac-12 right now. They want that to work out for them. They're very proud of their accomplishments and should be. They have a Hall of Fame caliber football coach right now. I understand why they are proud of the program, but you do point out a very real thing there. And I would again still say they fit more in Truckstopville, USA than they do in Palo Alto or Berkeley. We shall put it that way. But Utah has reason to be proud. I understand why they feel the way they do. I will just say maybe it is that we are picking on too few here. Maybe it's just message board genius posts, everything I see that seems crazy, like bat bleep crazy from Utah boards. And the people that are in my Twitter mentions all the time, like they seem like there are a lot of them. And it seems like that is kind of a permeated attitude throughout a lot of the fan base, but I could be wrong. And every fan base does certainly have their more wild factions. So I'll just hedge my bets a little bit there, but certainly Outlaw of College Football. You've been around long enough to know how I have felt about Utah fans throughout this whole process. We've certainly had our battles. Okay. Does somebody want to DM me on Twitter the link to the I can look it up too, but if somebody on Twitter @ JL. Kurtz will DM me the link to the Canzano interview you guys are talking about, I will 100% share that. 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 I will 100% sh I'll try to force myself to make it through that before our next live show coming up on Sunday. Okay, deal? Deal? Can we do that? Deal? I know Jeremy says stop being so lazy. Well, last time we were talking about something last time. Someone suggested me to go look at something and they followed up immediately with a Twitter DM. And all I had to do was just make one click to go find it. So I'm spoiled now. I'm spoiled, guys. You've spoiled me. Don't blame me. This is on you. You guys raised me. You spoiled me. That was not my fault. Okay. Blame the parents. Stop blaming millennials. Blame the boomers. I'm blaming the parents on this one. Appreciate all of you guys for being here. Thank you so much. Let's continue to grow this thing, man. Spread the word on your socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Facebook groups. Great place to go drop the links into here. If you're fans of your school, fans of the Big 12, all of that stuff is great to help spread and grow this channel. Continue to do that. Word of mouth. Any of your friends or family that you think love the Big 12, love your squad, that would be interested in the content here, I would greatly appreciate that. On your way out the door, if you could like the video, I would very much appreciate that as well. If you leave a comment in the comment section, whether you love me, hate me, or you just want to say comment, all of that is great. Love you guys who do that. Let's continue to spike that algorithm here on YouTube. Thank you for all of that. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to support the channel that way as well. That is another very easy way to do that if you are catching this after the fact. Thank you so much again, all of you guys, for being here. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Congratulations. Salute to the 4 new schools as they officially join coming up this weekend. And I will talk to you all soon. Take care.